That moment is forever etched in my memory, standing there in my navy dress, pearls around my neck, watching as Jessica, my only daughter, pointed us toward the far corner of the restaurant. "Mom, Dad, your seats are over there." I followed, her finger to see a small round table decorated with cartoon characters, plastic cups, and crayons. The children's table. My husband Robert's face flushed crimson as he whispered, "There must be some mistake." But Jessica just smiled, patting his shoulder. "We need the main table for Tyler's family and the wedding party. It's just for tonight." Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. That's when I should have known. That's when I should have seen what was happening. But like any mother who loves her daughter beyond reason, I swallowed my pride, smiled, and took my seat among the booster chairs and sippy cups. 2 days later, she asked us for $70,000 for her dream wedding in Maui. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. How my sweet Jessica turned into someone I barely recognized. And how I finally found the strength to do what needed to be done. I'm Eleanor Wilson, though everyone calls me Ellie. My husband Robert and I built Wilson Construction from nothing but a pickup truck and determination 30 years ago. Now we oversee commercial projects across 3 states, and we've worked hard for everything we have. We raised our daughter Jessica with the same values, at least we thought we did. Jessica was always our pride and joy, bright, ambitious, and kind. She graduated from University of Oregon with honors, landed a great position at Northwest Financial Partners, and seemed to be on the perfect track. When she started dating Tyler Matthews 2 years ago, we were cautiously optimistic. He worked in the same building, had a decent job in marketing, and spoke well when we first met him. He wasn't exactly setting the world on fire with ambition, but he treated Jessica well, or so we thought. The first time we met Tyler's family was at their home for dinner, about 6 months into their relationship. I'll never forget pulling up to their modest suburban house and noticing how Tyler immediately tensed. "Just don't mention anything about your company, okay? My parents are sensitive about money stuff." I nodded, thinking it was simply a matter of different financial situations, which was completely understandable. Robert and I had started with nothing. We knew what it was like, but the moment we stepped through the door, something felt off. Diane Matthews, Tyler's mother, barely made eye contact as she took my coat. Her handshake was limp, dismissive. The house was cluttered, which didn't bother me, but what did strike me was how Diane immediately pulled Jessica aside, appraising her designer watch and handbag with narrowed eyes. "Must be nice," she muttered, loud enough for me to hear. "Some girls have all the luck with their parents." Jessica blushed but said nothing, which surprised me. My daughter had always been confident, never one to shrink into herself. Greg, Tyler's father, was slightly warmer, but spent most of the evening talking about himself. His golf game, his complaints about neighbors, his opinions on everything from politics to pasta sauce. What truly opened my eyes was when the topic turned to Jessica and Tyler's future. Diane leaned forward, lips pursed in what I'm sure she thought was a smile. "So, when you two get married, I hope you'll buy a house near us. We've always expected Tyler would stay close. Family should stay together, don't you think?" Jessica nodded politely. "We haven't really discussed." "And of course," Diane continued, as if Jessica hadn't spoken, "we'll need a place with an in-law suite. Greg and I have always planned to move in with Tyler once we retire, probably in the next few years." I watched my daughter's expression flicker with surprise before settling back into a polite mask. Tyler stared at his plate, saying nothing. On the drive home, I carefully asked Jessica what she thought of the evening. "They're just different from us, Mom. They're family-oriented, that's all." "Honey, there's family-oriented, and then there's Presumptuous, I ventured. Jessica sighed. Tyler's not like them. He's caught in the middle, that's all. They've always depended on him. I let it drop, but a seed of worry had been planted. Over the next year, I watched as Tyler gradually revealed more of his true nature. He forgot his wallet when they went out, leaving Jessica to pay. He talked about our future house when discussing property in Lake Oswego, the affluent suburb where they couldn't possibly afford to live on their salaries. He made casual comments about Jessica's cushy trust fund, though we'd never set one up, having always taught her the value of working for what you want. Then came the engagement. Tyler proposed with a modest ring, which would have been perfectly fine if he hadn't immediately told Jessica that they could upgrade it once your parents chip in. Jessica laughed it off when she told me, but I saw the flicker of discomfort in her eyes. "Is this what you want, sweetheart?" I asked carefully. "Of course, Mom. Tyler's great. He's just practical about money." I nodded, remembering how Robert and I had started with a tiny apartment and garage sale furniture. There's practical, and then there's calculating. Jessica bristled. Not everyone had the advantages you and Dad have had. I nearly choked on my tea. Advantages? Your father and I worked 60-hour weeks for years. We took out second mortgages to keep the business afloat during the recession. We skipped vacations for a decade to pay for your education. I know, she said, waving dismissively. But you don't understand what it's like for our generation. Everything's so expensive now. That night, I discussed my concerns with Robert. Something's not right, I said. She's changing, becoming defensive about money in a way she never was before. Robert sighed, rubbing his temples. Tyler's ambitious, I'll give him that. But I'm not sure it's the right kind of ambition. He seems to be looking for shortcuts. Shortcuts that involve our checkbook, I added. Despite our concerns, we decided to support the engagement. Jessica was an adult, and we respected her choices, even if we questioned them privately. We agreed to help with a reasonable wedding budget of $20,000, which we thought was generous. 2 weeks later, Jessica and Tyler invited us to dinner at Harper's Fine Dining, an upscale restaurant downtown, to discuss wedding plans. We arrived to find Tyler's entire family already there: his parents, his sister Amber, her husband Keith, and their 5-year-old son Noah running between tables. Jessica greeted us with air kisses. "Mom, Dad, you remember Tyler's family." Diane barely nodded in our direction, already sipping what appeared to be an expensive cocktail. Greg gave a perfunctory handshake, his eyes immediately returning to the wine list, the priciest page I couldn't help but notice. "We've got the best table in the house," Tyler announced proudly. "Right here in the center." That's when Jessica pointed us toward the children's table in the corner, where Noah was already scribbling on the paper tablecloth with crayons. "You'll be sitting over there tonight." Robert and I exchanged glances of disbelief. "There must be some mistake," Robert said quietly. "That's the children's table." Jessica laughed lightly. "It's just that we need to discuss wedding details with Tyler's family, and this main table only seats 6 adults. It's not a big deal. You'll be helping watch Noah. Amber and Keith need a break." I looked around the restaurant. There were plenty of other regular tables available. We could have easily been seated at an adjacent table, not relegated to the corner with cartoon placemats. "Jessica," I began, my voice low. "This is inappropriate. We're your parents, not babysitters." Tyler stepped in, his tone condescending. "Ellie, please, it's just for dinner. We didn't think you'd make such a fuss. It's just a table." My cheeks burned at his use of my first name, something he'd never done before, and the dismissive tone. But the restaurant was crowded. People were watching, and I refused to create a scene. Robert squeezed my hand, his silent signal that we'd discuss this later. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. So we sat at the children's table, with plastic cups and Noah's constant chatter about dinosaurs. From our corner, I watched as champagne was ordered at the main table, elaborate appetizers appeared, and animated conversation flowed, all without a single glance in our direction. Halfway through the meal, I excused myself to use the restroom. As I passed behind the main table, I overheard Diane Matthews speaking in a hushed, but clearly audible tone. Completely reasonable to ask them to contribute. The Wilsons have that construction company. They can easily afford a Maui wedding. Jessica's voice uncharacteristically sharp. Mom and Dad can be so stingy, though. They act like they struggled, but look at their house, their cars. My steps faltered. My daughter, my Jessica, was talking about us like we were ATMs with inconvenient opinions attached. I continued to the restroom in a daze, locking myself in a stall until I could compose myself. When I returned, I kept my face neutral, finishing my chicken fingers and making appropriate responses to Noah's endless questions about why grown-ups had to sit at the kids' table too. After dessert, when Noah had finally exhausted himself and was dozing against Keith's shoulder, Tyler clinked his glass and stood. "We've been thinking a lot about the wedding," he announced, beaming, "and we've decided that a local ceremony just doesn't fit our vision." Jessica stood beside him, practically glowing. "We want to do a destination wedding in Maui, sunset. On the beach, tropical flowers, the works." Diane clapped her hands together. "It's going to be absolutely magnificent." Robert shifted beside me. "That sounds expensive." Tyler nodded enthusiastically. "It is, but that's why we're all here tonight. To discuss how we're going to make this dream come true, as a family." The way he emphasized family while we sat apart from the group wasn't lost on me. Jessica pulled out a folder and began distributing papers to everyone, even bringing 2 sheets over to us at our separate table. I looked down at what appeared to be a detailed wedding budget. My eyes widened as I saw the total at the bottom, $120,000. "This can't be right," I murmured. "We've broken down the contributions," Jessica continued brightly. "The Matthews family will be handling local transportation in Maui and the rehearsal dinner. This amounted to roughly $10,000 on the budget sheet. And we're hoping you and Dad can cover the venue, catering, and accommodations for the wedding party." I quickly calculated the figures, nearly $70,000. Robert cleared his throat. "Jessica, this is far beyond what we discussed." Tyler's smile didn't falter. "We know it's a stretch, but think of it as an investment in your daughter's happiness. Don't you want her to have the perfect day?" Before we could respond, Diane chimed in. "Our contribution is actually quite significant given our circumstances. We're making sacrifices too." I felt a sudden, overwhelming clarity. This dinner, the seating arrangement, it wasn't an oversight. It was deliberate. We had been physically positioned as outsiders, yet expected to foot the bill for their extravagance. "We need to discuss this privately," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Jessica, can we talk tomorrow?" Jessica frowned. "There's not much to discuss, Mom. The deposit for the venue is due next week. We just need you to transfer the money." $70,000 requires more than a split-second decision, Robert replied, his tone careful but firm. Greg Matthews snorted. "Come on, Robert. We all know that's pocket change for you folks." The restaurant seemed to go quiet around us. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw someone I didn't recognize. Her expression was entitled, impatient, as if our hesitation was an unreasonable inconvenience. "We should go," I said quietly to Robert. We stood, thanked the group for dinner with as much grace as we could muster, and walked out into the cool Portland evening. In the car, Robert's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. What just happened in there? I stared out the window at the passing streetlights. "I think we just got a glimpse of our future if we don't set some boundaries." The money is one thing, Robert said slowly. But the disrespect, putting us at the children's table like we're afterthoughts, while expecting us to bankroll. Their fantasy, I finished. We drove in silence for several minutes before Robert spoke again. Remember when Jess was little and she'd save her allowance for weeks to buy us Christmas presents? I smiled at the memory. A coffee mug for you, drugstore perfume for me. She was so proud to have bought them herself, Robert continued. What happened to that girl? I didn't have an answer, but I knew we needed to find out, and fast. The next morning, Jessica arrived at our house unannounced. She breezed through the door in designer sunglasses, carrying a wedding magazine and a coffee. So I've been thinking, she began without preamble, we could actually cut costs by limiting the open bar to just the first 2 hours. I set down my gardening gloves and studied my daughter. Jessica, we need to talk about last night. She waved dismissively. I know, the seating arrangement was awkward, but Noah gets anxious without supervision, and Amber and Keith really needed adult time. So you thought the appropriate solution was to seat your parents, who are paying for this wedding, apparently, at the children's table? Robert asked, coming in from his home office. Jessica sighed dramatically. It's not like you're going to remember the seating chart 20 years from now. The important thing is the wedding, our dream wedding. That's what matters. What matters, I said carefully, is respect. Mutual respect. Fine, I'm sorry about the table, she conceded, though her tone suggested she was merely humoring us. Now, about the venue deposit. No, Robert said, the word hanging in the air between us. Jessica blinked. No what? No, we're not giving you $70,000 for a destination wedding, he clarified. That's not happening. Jessica's expression hardened. You promised to help with the wedding. We promised $20,000, I reminded her, which is still on the table. But this Maui extravaganza? The expectations that we'll fund luxury accommodations for Tyler's entire family? Absolutely not. Jessica's face flushed. You don't understand. Tyler's family is already contributing everything they can. It's not fair if you don't match their effort. I couldn't help but laugh. Their effort? Jessica, they're contributing less than 15% of the total. We're expected to cover nearly 60%, with you two handling the small remainder. They don't have what you have, she snapped. You've always had it easy. Robert's face darkened. Easy? Your mother and I built this company from nothing. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment until you were 3 years old. We drove used cars, shopped sales, and put everything back into the business. Don't you dare tell us we had it easy. Jessica rolled her eyes. Fine, you struggled in the Stone Age, but now you have money and you're just being selfish. The word hung in the air between us. Selfish. After everything we'd sacrificed, everything we'd done for her. Is that what Tyler tells you? I asked quietly. That we're selfish for not handing over our hard-earned money to fulfill his champagne wishes? Don't bring Tyler into this, Jessica warned. This is about you not supporting my happiness. I took a deep breath. Jessica, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Does Tyler love you for who you are, or for what he thinks you can provide? Her eyes widened with indignation. How dare you? Of course he loves me. Then he'll marry you whether it's on a beach in Maui or in the garden behind this house, Robert pointed out. Jessica gathered her things abruptly. I can't believe you're doing this to me. Everyone's expecting this wedding now. We've told people. Tyler's mom has already bought her dress. That was premature, I said evenly. She stood, slinging her designer bag over her shoulder. Fine. If that's how you want to be, I'll figure it out myself. I always do. As she stormed toward the door, I called after her. Jessica, wait. This isn't about the money. This is about the person you're becoming, and it scares me. She paused, her back to us. For a moment, I thought she might turn around, might hear what I was really saying. But then she yanked open the door. When Tyler and I are married, don't expect to be seated at the main table at family gatherings. That's reserved for people who actually support us. The door slammed behind her, leaving Robert and me in stunned silence. That went well, Robert finally said, attempting humor though his eyes were sad. I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. What do we do now? He sat beside me, taking my hand. We wait. Either she'll come to her senses or we lose her, I finished. 3 days passed with no word from Jessica. I called twice, leaving voicemails that went unreturned. I sent a text simply saying, "We love you. When you're ready to talk, we're here." Nothing. On the 4th day, Robert received a call from his assistant at Wilson Construction. "Sir, you might want to come in. Jessica and Tyler are here, and they're asking to speak with the HR director about accessing Jessica's trust fund." Robert's confusion was evident. What trust fund? We arrived at the office 20 minutes later to find Jessica and Tyler seated. In the conference room, Tyler typing furiously on his phone while Jessica stared out the window. "Jessica," I said as we entered. "What's going on?" Tyler answered before she could. "We're here to access Jessica's trust fund, the one from the company profits." Robert and I exchanged glances. "There is no trust fund," Robert said flatly. Tyler laughed nervously. "Come on, Mr. Wilson. Jessica told me all about it. The account that was set up when she was born. A percentage of company profits every year?" All eyes turned to Jessica, who suddenly seemed intensely interested in her manicure. "Jessica," I said carefully, "did you tell Tyler you have a trust fund from Wilson Construction?" Her cheeks flushed. "I may have." "Implied that there was money set aside for me." "Implied?" Tyler's voice rose. "You showed me statements, projections." My stomach sank. "What statements, Jessica?" She remained silent, but Tyler pulled out his phone, scrolling rapidly before turning it toward us. There on the screen was what appeared to be a financial statement with the Wilson Construction logo, clearly doctored, showing a trust value of just over $2 million. "This is a forgery," Robert said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Jessica, did you create fake financial statements?" "It wasn't like that," she protested weakly. "I just needed Tyler to understand that we'd be okay financially. His parents kept pressuring him about money, about what I could bring to the marriage." The pieces suddenly clicked into place. So this whole time, Tyler thought he was marrying into immediate wealth? That's why he proposed? "No," Jessica insisted, but her eyes told a different story. "He loves me. The money was just a bonus." Tyler stood abruptly. "I need some air." He stalked out of the conference room, leaving Jessica alone with us. "How could you do this?" I asked, heartbroken. "Lie to him? Lie to us? Forge company documents?" Jessica's composure finally cracked. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. Tyler's family has expectations. They see me as their ticket out of financial stress. And Tyler, he talks big, but he's scared of disappointing them." "So you created a fictional trust fund to keep him interested?" Robert's voice was incredulous. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she whispered. I thought maybe you would help us. Give us a gift for the wedding that could start our life together." "By gift, you mean $70,000 for a beach wedding, followed by ongoing financial support?" I clarified. Jessica looked away. "When you say it like that, it sounds terrible." "Because it is terrible," Robert replied. "It's manipulative and dishonest." A heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, I asked the question that had been haunting me since the dinner. "Jessica, Do you even want to marry Tyler? Or is this all about keeping up appearances now that you've created this financial fantasy? Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know anymore. I love him, but it's all gotten so complicated. His family has these expectations. They're already talking about moving in with us eventually, about how I'll need to support them in retirement since they haven't saved anything. Robert and I exchanged alarmed glances. And the wedding, she continued. It keeps getting bigger and more expensive because Diane insists on inviting all these distant relatives and business contacts. It's like they're using our wedding as a networking event. Jessica, I said, gently, this isn't what marriage should be built on. She wiped her eyes. But I've already told everyone. We've announced it. People have booked flights. People can get refunds, Robert said. Pride heals. But marrying the wrong person for the wrong reasons? That pain lasts a lifetime. Jessica looked between us, her expression vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen since she was a teenager. What do I do? I moved to sit beside her. You start by being honest. With Tyler, with his family, with yourself. She nodded slowly. And the wedding? If after all the truth is out, you still want to marry him, we'll support a reasonable ceremony, Robert assured her. But no more lies, no more manipulation, and absolutely no more forged documents. Jessica took a shaky breath. Tyler's going to be so angry. Probably, I agreed. But better to face that anger now than years of resentment later. As if, on cue, Tyler returned to the conference room, his expression thunderous. There's no trust fund, is there? There never was. Jessica stood to face him. Tyler, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Do you have any idea what you've done? He interrupted. I told my parents we'd be set after the wedding. I promised them we'd help pay off their mortgage. My dad's already talking about retiring early. Robert stepped forward. That's enough. Those weren't Jessica's promises to make, but they weren't yours either. Your parents' financial situation is not my daughter's responsibility. Tyler turned on him. Easy for you to say. You've got all this. He gestured wildly around the modern office. What about the rest of us? The rest of us work for what we have, I replied evenly. We don't marry into it or demand it as a wedding gift. Tyler's face contorted with anger. This is all your fault. You raised her to be just like you, teasing people with what they can't have, leading them on. Jessica flinched. That's not fair, Tyler. Fair? He laughed bitterly. Was it fair to show me fake bank statements? To let me think we'd start our marriage with a nest egg? To let me promise my family things based on your lies? I made a mistake, Jessica admitted, her voice small. A huge mistake. I was scared of losing you. Tyler's expression shifted, calculation replacing anger. Well, there's still a way to fix this. He turned to Robert and me. You could create that trust fund now. Make the statements real. Nobody would have to know they were ever fake. I stared at him, incredulous. You're actually asking us to give Jessica $2 million to cover up her lie? Think of it as securing your daughter's future, Tyler insisted. Making sure she's taken care of. I think you mean making sure you're taken care of, Robert corrected. And your parents too, apparently. Tyler's mask finally slipped completely. You think you're so much better than us, don't you? With your big company and your fancy house. People like you have no idea what it's like to struggle. That's where you're wrong, I said quietly. We know exactly what it's like. The difference is, we didn't expect someone else to solve our problems. Jessica looked between us, something shifting in her expression. She turned to Tyler. Is that really how you see me? As a solution to your family's financial problems? Tyler backpedaled quickly. No, babe, of course not. I love you. The money's just... It would just make things easier. Easier for whom? She pressed. He didn't answer. Jessica took a deep breath. I think I need some time to think about all this. There's nothing to think about, Tyler insisted. We're getting married in 2 months. People have made arrangements. Arrangements can be changed, she said, her voice growing stronger. I need space, Tyler. His face hardened. Is that what they told you to say? They've never liked me. Never thought I was good enough for their precious daughter. That's not true, I interjected. We only ever wanted Jessica to be with someone who loves her for herself, not for what she can provide. Tyler sneered. Right, because being able to provide isn't important at all. That's easy to say when you've got millions. Tyler, stop, Jessica said firmly. This isn't about my parents. This is about us, and the foundation we've built our relationship on. I lied to you, and I'm sorry, but your reaction tells me everything. I need to know. He stared at her, realizing he'd revealed too much. Jess, come on. You know I love you. Maybe, she said sadly, but I don't think it's enough anymore. Tyler's eyes darted between the three of us, calculating his next move. Finally, he grabbed his jacket. Fine, take their side, but don't come crying to me when you realize what you've thrown away. As he stormed out, Jessica collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down her face. I've made such a mess of everything. I sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Sweetheart, we all make mistakes. The question is what we learn from them. Robert knelt in front of her. Jessica, I need to ask you something important. When exactly did the lies begin? When did Tyler and his family start expecting financial support from us? She wiped her eyes. Almost from the beginning, his mother kept making comments about how lucky I was, how I'd never had to worry about money. Tyler would laugh it off, but then he started talking about how we could help them once we were married. At first, it was little things, maybe helping with a car payment or medical bill. Then it grew. And the trust fund story? I prompted. Jessica looked away, ashamed. His father kept asking how we'd afford a house in Lake Oswego on our salaries. Tyler got defensive, said I had family money coming. When they pressed for details, I panicked and made up the trust fund story. Robert sighed. And Tyler believed it without ever verifying? He wanted to believe it, Jessica said quietly. We both did. As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt a curious mix of heartbreak and relief. Heartbreak for the pain my daughter was experiencing, but relief that the truth had emerged before vows were exchanged, before lives were permanently entangled. What happens now? Jessica asked, looking smaller and younger than she had in years. I squeezed her hand. Now you take some time. Think about what you really want, not what Tyler or his family or even what Dad and I want for you. And the wedding? She asked. Let's put everything on hold, Robert suggested. No decisions need to be made today. Jessica nodded, then looked up with tear-filled eyes. I'm so sorry. About the lies, about the children's table, about everything. I don't know who I've been lately. We know who you are, I assured her. You just lost sight of it for a while. As we left the office together, Jessica between us, I felt a glimmer of hope. The path forward wouldn't be easy. There would be embarrassing conversations, canceled plans, perhaps even some financial losses. But my daughter was finding her way back to herself, and that was worth more than any destination wedding could ever be. Later that evening, as Robert and I sat on our back porch watching the sunset, he took my hand. She's going to be okay, you know? I nodded. I know, she's stronger than she realizes. Gets that from her mother, he said with a small smile. I leaned against his shoulder, thinking about the journey ahead. You know what's strange? I'm actually grateful for that dinner, for the children's table. Grateful? Robert asked, surprised. It was so blatant, so disrespectful, that it couldn't be ignored or explained away, I mused. Sometimes we need that moment of perfect clarity to see what's been in front of us all along. Robert nodded thoughtfully. The question is, what will Jessica do with that clarity? I gazed out at the deepening dusk, watching as the first stars appeared in the evening sky. She'll find her way, and this time, she'll be walking a path that's truly her own. The morning after our confrontation at Wilson Construction, I woke to the sound of gentle rain against the windows. Robert had already left for an early meeting, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I made coffee and settled. At the kitchen island, staring out at the misty Portland landscape, when my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Can I come over? Need to talk." My heart skipped a beat. "Of course, I'm home all day," I replied. 40 minutes later, Jessica's car pulled into our driveway. Through the window, I watched her sit motionless behind the wheel for nearly 5 minutes before finally emerging. She looked different. Her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her face bare of makeup. She looked younger, vulnerable, like the daughter I remembered. When I opened the door, she didn't speak, just stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me in a tight hug. I held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo, feeling her shoulders shake with silent tears. "I've been so stupid. Mom," she whispered against my shoulder. I led her to the living room, where we sat side by side on the couch. "What happened?" I asked gently. Jessica wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "After Tyler left yesterday, I went back to our apartment to think. When I got there, I found him and Diane going through all my financial paperwork, bank statements, investment accounts, even my retirement plan from work." My stomach tightened. They were looking for money. She nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "When they saw me, Tyler didn't even look guilty. He just said, 'We need to figure out what we're working with since your parents won't help.' Like my personal finances were communal property already." "What did you do?" I asked. "I asked them to leave. Diane refused at first, saying they were just trying to help plan our future. I had to threaten to call the police before they finally went." She took a shuddering breath. But before she left, Diane said something I can't stop thinking about. She said, "This isn't what we agreed to, Jessica. You promised us security." The words hung in the air between us. "Did you?" I asked carefully. "Promise them security?" Jessica stared down at her hands. Not explicitly, but when Tyler would talk about how I could help his parents with bills or how we'd buy them a condo after we got married, I never contradicted him. I let them believe I could solve all their problems. "Why?" I pressed. "That's not like you, Jess." She was quiet for a long moment. "I wanted to belong," she finally admitted, her voice small. "The Matthews family is so tight-knit. They do everything together. They depend on each other. It's different from our family." The words stung, though I tried not to show it. "Different. How?" "You and Dad are so independent. You taught me to stand on my own feet, to make my own way. The Matthews, they pool everything. They share every burden, every decision." She looked up at me, her eyes searching. Sometimes I felt lonely being so self-sufficient. I absorbed her words, recognizing the truth in them. Robert and I had raised Jessica to be independent, perhaps to a fault. We'd emphasized achievement, responsibility, self-reliance, all good things, but perhaps we'd overlooked something important along the way. "I understand wanting to belong," I said softly. "Family connection is precious. But Jess, there's a difference between mutual support and exploitation." "I know that now," she said, wiping away tears. "Last night, after they left, I found text messages on Tyler's phone." She pulled out her own phone, scrolling quickly before handing it to me. I took pictures. I needed you to see I'm not making this up. The screen showed a conversation between Tyler and his mother. Tyler. Dad's freaking out about the trust. Fun thing. Says we need a backup plan. Diane. Tell Jessica your dad needs surgery or something. She'll get her parents to pay. Tyler. That won't work for the wedding money. Need something bigger. Diane. Then just marry her and worry about it later. Once you're married, what's hers is yours. We can figure out the rest. Tyler. What if her parents make her sign a prenup? Diane. Then you better get her pregnant fast. Child support's better than nothing. My hands shook with anger as I read. How long has this been going on? Months, Jessica admitted. But I didn't see it until now. I was so focused on making the relationship work, on being the perfect daughter-in-law, that I ignored all the red flags. Oh, sweetheart. I reached for her hand. There's more, she said, taking back the phone and opening a different set of screenshots. These are from Tyler to his sister, Amber. Tyler. Ellie and Robert turned down the wedding money. What now? Amber. Seriously? They're loaded. They're just being difficult. Tyler. Jessica's getting cold feet about the whole thing. Says we need to reevaluate. Amber. Don't let her back out. Mom and Dad are counting on this. So am I. Once you're married and have access to the Wilson money, remember you promised to help with Noah's private school. Tyler. I know. Working on it. Might need to make her feel guilty about the fake trust fund thing. Make it seem like she owes me for the embarrassment. I handed the phone back, feeling sick. Have you confronted Tyler about these? Jessica shook her head. I couldn't face him after reading all that. I packed a bag and went to stay with Madison. Madison had been Jessica's roommate in college and remained her closest friend. I've been up all night, thinking about how I got here. She leaned back against the couch cushions, suddenly looking exhausted. The worst part is, I knew something was wrong months ago. I just didn't want to admit it. What do you mean? I asked. Remember when we had that Christmas party here last year? Tyler asked me to show him Dad's office. I thought he was just curious, but he spent nearly 20 minutes going through Dad's desk when I stepped out to get drinks. I remembered that night, how Tyler had seemed unusually interested in Robert's business papers, asking pointed questions about company profits and expansion plans. Then there was the time he accidentally opened my bank statement and made a comment about how my savings should be growing faster with my salary. Jessica's voice grew stronger as she continued, piecing together a pattern she'd previously ignored. He was always finding ways to insert himself into my finances, suggesting joint accounts even before we were engaged. I listened, letting her process these realizations aloud. Last month, he suggested I apply for a credit increase on all my cards, just in case we need it for the wedding. When I asked why we'd put wedding expenses on credit cards, he shrugged. It off as being prepared. Jessica ran a hand through her hair. God, how did I not see what was happening? Because you were in love, I said simply. We all have blind spots when it comes to love. Jessica looked at me, her eyes clear despite the tears. I don't think I do love him, Mom. Not anymore. Maybe I never really did. She took a deep breath. I think I was in love with the idea of belonging to his family, of being needed. Tyler made me feel like I was the answer to all their problems. And that felt good, I observed, being someone's solution. She nodded, until I realized I was just a meal ticket. Her voice cracked, a walking, talking bank account. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of the situation settling around us. Finally, Jessica straightened her shoulders. I need to end this engagement, she said firmly. Today. Are you sure? I asked, not because I disagreed, but because I wanted her to be certain. Completely sure, she replied. I can't marry someone who sees me as a financial plan rather than a partner. I squeezed her hand. Do you want me to come with you when you talk to him? She hesitated, then shook her head. No, this is something I need to do myself, but… She paused. Would you mind if I moved back home for a little while? Just until I figure things out. Your room is exactly as you left it, I said, smiling through sudden tears. You can stay as long as you need. Jessica spent the afternoon gathering essential belongings from the apartment she shared with Tyler, timing her visit while he was at work. Robert and I helped her move several boxes into her old bedroom, neither of us mentioning the wedding gifts already piling up in our guest room. Problem for another day. That evening, Jessica asked us to give her privacy for a difficult phone call. She sat on the back porch, shoulders squared, phone in hand. Through the window, I watched my daughter's profile as she spoke, her posture gradually shifting from tense to relieved. When she finally came inside, her eyes were red, but her expression was peaceful. It's done, she said simply. We're over. Robert pulled her into a hug. I'm proud of you, Jess. She managed a weak smile. He didn't even fight for us, you. No? When I said I was ending it, his first question was whether I'd still help with his parents' mortgage. She shook her head in disbelief. That's when I knew for sure I was making the right decision. What happens now? I asked. With the wedding plans? Jessica sank into a chair at the kitchen table. I need to contact everyone. Cancel the venue deposit, return gifts, let guests know. Her face fell. It's going to be so embarrassing. People will understand, Robert assured her. And those who don't weren't real friends to begin with. Over the next few days, Jessica methodically dismantled what would have been her wedding. She wrote heartfelt emails to guests, returned gifts with handwritten notes of apology, and canceled reservations. Each task seemed to strengthen her resolve rather than diminish it. What we didn't anticipate was the Matthews family's reaction. It began with phone calls, dozens of them, from Tyler, his parents, even his sister Amber. When Jessica stopped answering, they started showing up at our house. Diane would park across the street, watching our front door for hours. Greg twice confronted Robert outside his office, demanding we fix this misunderstanding. They're acting like we've stolen something from them, Jessica observed, peering through the blinds at Diane's car. Like I've broken some contract. In their minds you have, I replied. You were their financial solution, and now that plan's fallen apart. The harassment escalated when Tyler's brother-in-law Keith showed up at Jessica's workplace, causing such a scene in the lobby that security had to escort him out. That evening, Jessica received a text from Tyler that chilled my blood. You've ruined everything. My family will never recover from this. I hope you're happy. This has gone too far, Robert declared, already dialing our lawyer's number. We're getting a restraining order. The temporary restraining order granted Jessica some respite, but the Matthews family simply shifted tactics. Rumors began, circulating among our social circle, whispers that Jessica had cheated, that she was unstable, that we had forced the breakup because Tyler wasn't good enough for the Wilson family. Most painful were the posts on social media from Diane Matthews, crafted to garner sympathy. Devastated that money and status mean more than love to some families. Praying for those who place wealth above commitment. Jessica withdrew further, deleting her social media accounts and throwing herself into work. She lost weight, developed insomnia, and started jumping at unexpected sounds. The strong, confident daughter I knew seemed to be fading away, replaced by someone anxious and uncertain. 6 weeks after the broken engagement, I found Jessica sitting on our kitchen floor at 3 a.m., surrounded by old photo albums. I couldn't sleep, she explained as I joined her, pulling my robe tighter. I've been thinking about when things started to go wrong. I studied the open album in her lap, pictures from her college graduation, her face beaming with pride and Possibility. Tyler wasn't the first, she said quietly. The first person who wanted me for what I could provide. I frowned. What do you mean? Jessica turned to an earlier page, her sophomore year of college. Remember David? The guy I dated for almost a year? I nodded. David had been charming, attentive, always complimenting Jessica on her intelligence and drive. He used to forget his wallet all the time, she recalled. He'd talk about how stressed he was about tuition, then casually mention how his parents couldn't help like mine did. She traced a photo of them together at a campus event. I paid his rent for 3 months before I realized he was spending money on expensive electronics and concert tickets while telling me he couldn't afford groceries. I hadn't known this. Why didn't you tell us? She shrugged. I was embarrassed. I thought I'd been stupid. She flipped to another page, her first job after college. Then there was my former boss at Meridian Investments. He kept promising me a promotion, saying I was destined for leadership, but every time a position opened up, he'd give it to someone else. I remember, I said. That's why you left for Northwest Financial. Jessica nodded. What I didn't tell you was that he expected me to keep doing the work of a senior analyst while paying me as a junior. When I finally confronted him, he said I should be grateful for the opportunity to prove myself. Her voice hardened. He knew I didn't need the money as badly as some others since I had successful parents to fall back on. As she continued through the album, a pattern emerged. Friends who always needed loans they never repaid, roommates who consistently fell short on rent, colleagues who expected her to pick up the slack without recognition. Small instances on their own, but together they painted a troubling picture. I think, she said slowly, I've been trained to believe my value is in what I can provide for others. That being needed is the same as being loved. The revelation struck me with the force of physical pain. Had Robert and I inadvertently contributed to this belief? We'd raised Jessica to be generous, to help others when she could. But had we forgotten to teach her that she deserved to be valued for herself alone? Jess, I began, carefully choosing my words. There's a difference between generosity and being exploited, between being supportive and being used. I know that intellectually, she said, but emotionally, I keep finding myself in these same patterns. She closed the album with a decisive snap. I don't want to do it anymore. Good, I said firmly, because you deserve better. She leaned her head against my shoulder, suddenly looking exhausted. How do I break the cycle? One day at a time, I replied, starting with being kind to yourself. Over the next month, Jessica began seeing a therapist, someone specializing in relationship patterns and family dynamics. She threw herself into projects at work, earning recognition that boosted her confidence. Slowly, the color returned to her cheeks, the spark to her eyes. Then came the invitation to the annual Financial Services Awards dinner, a prestigious event where Jessica's team was nominated for Innovation of the Year. She'd been instrumental in developing the investment strategy that earned the nomination. I don't know if I should go, she confessed as we shopped for groceries one weekend. Tyler might be there. His company usually sends representatives. All the more reason to attend, I countered. This is your accomplishment, your night. Don't let fear of an awkward encounter rob you of that. She frowned, examining an apple with unnecessary intensity. It's not just that. I'd have to go alone. Everyone else will have dates. So? You're comfortable on your own? Am I? She looked up, her expression wistful. Sometimes I think I've forgotten how to be. That evening, while Jessica was at her therapy session, I broached the subject with Robert. She needs to go to this awards dinner. It's important for her career. He agreed. But she's still fragile. Running into Tyler or, God forbid, any of his family members could set her back. What if we went with her? I suggested. Not as dates, but as her support system. We could sit at a different table even. Just be present in case things get difficult. Robert considered this. It's not conventional, but when have we ever cared about convention? When Jessica returned, we presented our idea. To my surprise, she didn't immediately reject it. You wouldn't mind? She asked, looking between us. It's not exactly a parent-friendly event. Lots of drinking, networking, industry gossip. We've survived worse, Robert assured her with a smile. And we'll stay out of your way. Think of us as your emergency backup, not your chaperones. The night of the awards dinner arrived, and Jessica looked stunning in a simple black dress, her hair elegantly styled, a quiet confidence in her stance that had been missing for months. She'd insisted on driving separately, asserting her independence in a way that made me quietly proud. The event was held at the Sentinel Hotel downtown, its historic ballroom transformed with twinkling lights and elaborate floral arrangements. Robert and I found our table near the back, while Jessica joined her colleagues closer to the stage. From a distance, I watched my daughter work the room, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, discussing industry matters with the ease of someone in her element. She looked so grown up, so accomplished, that my heart swelled with pride. She's going to be fine, Robert murmured, following my gaze. Better than fine. I was about to agree when I spotted him, Tyler, standing near the bar in a poorly fitted suit, scanning the room with obvious intent. When his eyes landed on Jessica, his expression darkened. He immediately began moving in her direction. "Robert," I hissed, nudging him. 3:00. He spotted Tyler and was half rising from his seat when another figure intercepted Tyler's path, a tall man in an impeccably tailored suit. Though I couldn't hear their conversation, the man's body language was clear. He was creating a deliberate barrier between Tyler and Jessica. "Who is that?" Robert wondered aloud. The stranger spoke briefly to Tyler, who appeared to argue before finally retreating to the far side of the room. The man then turned, and I caught a glimpse of his profile, handsome, with kind eyes and an assured demeanor. To my surprise, he didn't approach Jessica, but simply returned to his table, occasionally glancing in her direction with what appeared to be concern. "Interesting," I murmured. When the awards presentation began, Jessica's team did indeed win Innovation of the Year. She took the stage with her colleagues, her speech brief but powerful, acknowledging her team's efforts while explaining the strategy they'd developed with clarity and confidence. As the evening wound down, I noticed the mysterious man from earlier approaching our table. Up close, he appeared to be in his mid-30s, with intelligent eyes and an easy smile. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson?" he asked, extending his hand. "I'm Benjamin Reynolds. I work at Pacific Northwest Trust." Robert shook his hand. "A pleasure. How... Did you know who we are?" Benjamin smiled. "Jessica pointed you out earlier. She mentioned you were here as her support system tonight. I think that's wonderful." "You know our daughter?" I asked, intrigued. "We've crossed paths at industry events," he explained. "I've always respected her work." He glanced across, the room to where Jessica was gathering her things. I noticed Tyler Matthews heading her way earlier and thought it might be best to intercept. I hope I wasn't overstepping. "Not at all," Robert assured him. "We appreciate anyone looking out for Jessica these days." Benjamin nodded, his expression turning serious. "I heard about the broken engagement. Office grapevine," he added apologetically. "For what it's worth, I think she made the right decision. Matthews always struck me as opportunistic." Before we could respond, Jessica appeared at our table, flushed with success and champagne. "Mom, Dad, we did it. She stopped short, noticing Benjamin. "Oh, hello." "Congratulations on the award," Benjamin said warmly. "Well deserved. Your approach to socially responsible investing while maintaining competitive returns is genuinely innovative." Jessica looked surprised but pleased. You're familiar with our strategy? I've followed your team's work for some time, he admitted. I'm Benjamin Reynolds, by the way. He extended his hand, which Jessica shook. Jessica Wilson. And apparently you've met my parents. Just introducing myself, Benjamin clarified. They raised an impressive daughter. Jessica blushed slightly, then turned to us. Ready to head out? I'm exhausted but too wired to sleep. I was thinking maybe coffee somewhere. Actually, Robert said, exchanging a quick glance with me, I'm feeling a bit worn out. Would you mind terribly if your mother and I headed home? I caught on immediately. You should celebrate with your colleagues, sweetheart. This is your night. Jessica looked between us, suspicion dawning on her face. You two are the least subtle people I know. Benjamin cleared his throat. If you're looking for company, Jessica, I was about to grab a coffee myself. The night's still young, and I'd love to hear more about your investment philosophy. For a moment, Jessica hesitated, and I could see the calculation in her eyes, the wariness born from recent betrayal, the temptation of genuine connection, the fear of making another mistake. Just coffee, Benjamin added gently, seeming to understand her hesitation. No pressure, and I promise not to ask you to fund my startup or pay off my student loans. The joke, delivered with perfect timing, broke the tension. Jessica laughed, a real laugh that reached her eyes. Well, when you put it that way, how can I refuse? Just let me grab my coat. As she walked away, Benjamin turned to us. She'll be perfectly safe. I have nothing but respect for her. No, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. There was something trustworthy about this man, something genuine that Tyler had always lacked. Robert offered his hand again. Good meeting you, Benjamin. Perhaps we'll see you again sometime. I'd like that, he replied, with a sincerity that warmed my heart. On the drive home, Robert and I were unusually quiet, both processing the evening's events. He seems nice, Robert finally said as we turned onto our street. Yes, I agreed. But more importantly, did you see her face? When she laughed at his joke? Robert nodded. I saw. First real smile in months. I gazed out the window at the passing houses, each a little universe of its own. It's just coffee, I reminded myself. Just a beginning. Sometimes, Robert said wisely, that's enough. When I woke the next morning, I found Jessica already in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared breakfast. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore an old college sweatshirt, but there was a lightness to her movements that had been missing for too long. Morning, I said, pouring myself a cup of coffee. You're up early. She turned, a slight smile playing at her lips. Couldn't sleep. Too much thinking. About the award? I asked, though I suspected otherwise. Among other things. She flipped a pancake with unnecessary focus. Benjamin's nice. I kept my voice carefully neutral. He seemed so. Jessica glanced at me, her expression softening. We talked for hours. About work at first, then books, travel, family. She paused. He lost his father last year. Has been helping his mother adjust to being alone after 40 years of marriage. That's kind of him, I observed. It is. She placed a stack of pancakes on the table. He asked about the broken engagement. My heart skipped. What did you tell him? The truth, she said simply. That I'd been with someone who valued what I could provide more than who I am. That I'm still learning how to recognize the difference. I felt a surge of pride at her honesty. How did he respond? He listened, Jessica said, a note of wonder in her voice. Just listened, without judgment or advice. Then he told me about his own relationship mistakes, a fiancé who cheated, a girlfriend who lied about her past. He said hurt doesn't define us unless we let it. She sat across from me, her eyes clear and focused. I'm not rushing into anything, Mom. I know I need time. But last night reminded me that there are good people out there. Genuine people. I reached across the table to squeeze her hand. I'm glad. She squeezed back, then smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes and illuminated her face. Me too. In that moment, watching sunlight stream across our kitchen table and my daughter's renewed spirit, I felt something settle within me. The road ahead would still have its challenges. Unresolved feelings, lingering trust issues, the inevitable complications of healing. But Jessica was finding her way forward, one step at a time. And sometimes, that's all any of us can really ask for. Not perfection, not an absence of pain, but the courage to keep moving, to stay open to possibility, to believe in better days ahead. Looking at my daughter across the breakfast table, I saw that courage in action. And I knew, whatever came next, she would face it with the same strength and dignity that had brought her through the storm. That sense of peace lasted exactly 3 days before chaos erupted again. Jessica was just settling into her new routine, living at home, focusing on work, cautiously texting with Benjamin, when the first wave hit. It began with a certified letter addressed to Jessica from a law firm we'd never heard of. Paxton, Morley, and Associates. What is this? Jessica frowned, tearing open the envelope at the breakfast table. I watched her face transition from confusion to disbelief to white-hot anger as she read. Without a word, she handed the letter to me. My eyes widened as I scanned the formal legal language. They're demanding reimbursement for financial losses incurred due to the canceled wedding? This can't be serious. Robert took the letter, his expression darkening as he read. $57,000 for non-refundable deposits, emotional distress, and reputational damage to the Matthews family? This is absurd. Jessica's hands trembled slightly as she poured herself more coffee. They're claiming I led Tyler on in bad faith, knowing I never intended to go through with the wedding. That's the exact opposite of what happened, I said, indignant. If anyone acted in bad faith, it was Tyler and his family, trying to use you as their personal bank account. They've also listed Tyler's mother's dress, their airfare to Maui for a venue inspection trip, and Jessica's voice caught. $50,000 for the dowry investment they claim Tyler's parents made in his future by helping him relocate to Portland to be with me 3 years ago. Robert set the letter down with deliberate calm. This isn't a legal claim. It's harassment dressed up in legal terminology. Should we be worried? Jessica asked. About the legal claim? No, it's baseless, Robert assured her. But about the Matthews family's desperation? Yes. This shows they're willing to go to extreme lengths. I studied my daughter's face, noting the shadows under her eyes that had just begun to fade. Now, deepening again. We'll handle this, I promised. We'll contact our lawyer today. Jessica nodded, but her earlier lightness had vanished. As she headed upstairs to prepare for work, I turned to Robert. They're not going to let her go, are they? I asked quietly. Robert's expression was grim. They've convinced themselves she owes them a lifestyle upgrade. People with that level of entitlement rarely give up easily. Our lawyer, Miranda Chen, wasted no time addressing the claim. Her response letter was a masterpiece of professional contempt, dismantling each accusation while subtly reminding the Matthews family that pursuing this further would only expose their own questionable behavior. This should put an end to the legal angle, Miranda assured us during a conference call. Their claims wouldn't survive the first hearing, and they'd risk counterclaims for harassment. For a brief moment, we believed her. Then the social media campaign began. Diane Matthews, apparently realizing that legal intimidation had failed, pivoted to public humiliation. She created a private Facebook group called Wedding Disasters and Warning Signs, that quickly grew to over 300 members, many from Portland's tight-knit business community. Though she never named Jessica directly, her posts left little doubt about the target. When a bride-to-be backs out 3 weeks before the wedding, leaving a devastated family with bills they can't afford, what recourse do parents have? Asking for a heartbroken friend whose son was abandoned by his too-good-for-us fiancé. The post accumulated dozens of sympathetic comments, many from people Jessica knew professionally. Tyler's sister Amber took a more direct approach on Instagram, posting a photo of her tearful son holding a Best Ring Bearer t-shirt with the caption, "Having to explain to your 5-year-old why he can't be in Auntie's wedding anymore because she decided her family wasn't good enough? Thanks for the life lesson in disappointment, Jay. Hope your parents' money keeps you warm at night." Jessica discovered the posts during her lunch break. I received her text, simply SOS, and found her in her office, door closed, blinds drawn, staring at her computer screen in horror. "Everyone's seen these," she whispered as I entered. "Clients are asking if I'm okay. My boss called me in this morning to make sure personal issues wouldn't affect my performance." I glanced at the screen, my blood pressure rising at the sight of yet another passive-aggressive post from Diane, this one hinting at financial irregularities that had come to light after the engagement ended. "They're trying to damage your reputation," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Make it about you being shallow or dishonest, instead of them being greedy and manipulative." Jessica closed her laptop with a decisive click. "I can't fight this. Responding would only give it oxygen." "You're right," I agreed. "But ignoring it isn't working either." She ran a hand through her hair, disheveling it further. "What's the alternative? Go nuclear? Post screenshots of Tyler's texts about using me for money? Expose his mother's plans to move in with us?" I considered this. "It would certainly set the record straight." "And make me look bitter and vengeful," Jessica countered. "Plus, it would just escalate the war. I need this to end, Mom, not intensify." She was right, of course. Engaging in a public mudslinging match would only prolong the pain and potentially damage her professional reputation further. But staying silent while the Matthews family controlled the narrative felt equally wrong. That evening, we held a family strategy session around the dining table. Robert had printed out the most damaging social media posts, along with screenshots of supportive messages Jessica had received from friends who saw through the manipulation. "We need to understand what they really want," Robert said, laying everything out. "This isn't just about humiliating Jessica. They're too strategic for that." Jessica nodded. "They want money. They always have." "But the legal route failed," I pointed out. "And publicly shaming you might make them feel better, but it doesn't put cash in their pockets." "Unless?" Robert trailed off, thinking. "Unless they're trying to pressure you into a settlement. Make your life so miserable that paying them off seems like the easiest option." Jessica's eyes widened. "You think that's it? They're hoping I'll just write a check to make them go away?" "It would explain the escalation," I agreed. "First the legal letter with a specific dollar amount, then the public pressure campaign when that didn't work." "So what do we do?" Jessica asked. Robert leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled in thought. "We could try to outmaneuver them. Threaten a defamation suit for the social media posts. Your mother and I could post our own accounts of what really happened." Jessica shook her head. "No, that just keeps the story alive. I want this to end." She paused, then added quietly, "Benjamin suggested I might consider talking to Tyler directly. Cut out the family dynamic." I raised an eyebrow. "When did Benjamin suggest this?" A faint blush colored Jessica's cheeks. "We had dinner last night. I mentioned the legal letter." Seeing my expression, she quickly added, "It was just at that little Italian place on 23rd. Very public, very casual." Robert and I exchanged glances but kept our focus on the problem at hand. "Meeting," Tyler alone might be risky, I cautioned. He's proven untrustworthy, and his family has him firmly under their influence. Not alone, Jessica clarified. Benjamin offered to come with me, as a neutral third party. She fidgeted with her napkin. He works with conflict resolution. As part of his job at Pacific Northwest Trust, helping families navigate wealth transitions without destroying relationships. I considered this. Benjamin had impressed us at the awards dinner with his integrity and direct approach. Having him present might actually help control the situation. If you think Tyler would agree to meet without his family, it might be worth trying, I conceded. But I'd want ground rules. Public place, limited time, clear agenda. Jessica nodded, looking relieved. That's exactly what Benjamin said. 2 days later, Jessica met Tyler at a downtown coffee shop with Benjamin present as a mediator. Robert and I waited anxiously at home, jumping every time my phone buzzed. Finally, after 90 minutes that felt like 9 hours, Jessica texted, "Heading home. All okay. Interesting development." She arrived 30 minutes later, looking thoughtful but not distraught. Benjamin accompanied her to the door but declined coming in, saying he needed to get back to work. The brief look they exchanged spoke volumes about a growing connection beyond this crisis. Once inside, Jessica kicked off her shoes and collapsed onto the sofa. Well, that was illuminating. "What happened?" I asked, perching beside her. Robert leaned against the doorframe, trying to appear casual despite his obvious concern. Jessica took a deep breath. Tyler's drowning. His parents have racked up nearly $70,000 in credit card debt planning for their new life after we got married. They've already given notice at their apartment because they were so sure they'd be moving in with us. "That's not your problem," Robert said firmly. "No, it's not," Jessica agreed. "But here's the thing. Tyler's miserable, completely miserable. His mother has been screening his calls, monitoring his text messages, even going through his mail looking for any communication from me." I frowned. He's a grown man. "A grown man who's been controlled his entire life," Jessica countered. The more he talked, the clearer it became that he's as much a victim of his family's manipulation as I was. Maybe more so, since he's never had the chance to break free. Robert's expression remained skeptical. "That sounds suspiciously like an excuse for his behavior." "Not an excuse," Jessica clarified. "An explanation. There's a difference." She leaned forward. "The interesting part is what happened when Benjamin asked Tyler point blank what he actually wants from me now." "And?" I prompted. "He broke down completely. Said he just wants out of his family's expectations, out of their financial disaster, out of the whole situation." Jessica's voice softened. "He admitted that while he does care about me, he was relieved when the engagement ended because he knew we were getting married for all the wrong reasons." I exchanged a surprised glance with Robert. This wasn't what we'd expected. "So where does that leave things?" Robert asked cautiously. Jessica sighed. "Tyler agreed to talk to his parents, make them stop the social media campaign and legal threats. In exchange, I won't publicly expose their schemes or pursue legal action for harassment." "Do you trust him to follow through?" I asked. "Honestly? No," Jessica admitted. "But Benjamin suggested a clever approach. Tyler's going to tell his parents that my rich family is prepared to countersue for defamation, with damages that would bankrupt them completely. He thinks fear will motivate them where decency hasn't." Robert nodded slowly. "That might actually work. People who use intimidation often fold when faced with a bigger threat." "I hope so," Jessica said wearily. "I just want to move on with my life." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced down to see a message from an unknown number. "This is Diane Matthews. Tell your daughter this isn't over. She made commitments to our family that we expect her to honor." I wordlessly passed the phone to Jessica, who read it and closed. Her eyes briefly before responding with remarkable calm. Forward that to Miranda. It directly violates the harassment order. For the next week, we lived in a strange limbo. The social media posts stopped, but we continued receiving hang-up calls at odd hours. Tyler texted Jessica occasionally with updates on his attempts to reason with his parents, each message more desperate than the last. "They're not backing down," he wrote. "My father's talking about principle now, not even the money. Says you humiliated them and need to be taught a lesson." Jessica showed me the text with a sigh. They're doubling down on being victims instead of admitting their own role in this mess. I squeezed her shoulder. Some people find it easier to blame others than take responsibility for their own choices. "I know," she agreed. "I just wish they'd direct their anger at me instead of trying to damage my professional reputation." Unfortunately, the Matthews family seemed to intuit exactly what would hurt Jessica most. The whisper campaign among Portland's financial community continued, with Diane and Greg strategically mentioning concerns about Jessica's ethics during social events with potential clients. The impact became clear when Jessica's boss called her into his office for a brief chat that left her shaken and angry. "They've gotten to Lawrence," she fumed, pacing our kitchen that evening. "He said clients have been asking questions about my stability and judgment. He assured me he has complete faith in me, but suggested I might want to keep a lower profile for a while." Robert's expression darkened. "That's completely unacceptable. You haven't done anything wrong." "It doesn't matter," Jessica replied, bitterly. "Perception is reality in client services. If people think there's an issue, there's an issue." I watched my daughter, noting the return of dark circles under her eyes and tension in her shoulders. After weeks of progress, she was sliding back into stress and anxiety because of the Matthews family's vindictive campaign. "Enough," I said firmly. "This has gone too far." Jessica looked up, surprised by my tone. "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's time to stop playing defense," I declared. "The Matthews family won't stop until they face real consequences for their actions." Robert raised an eyebrow. "What are you suggesting, Ellie?" I felt a calm determination settle over me. "I'm suggesting we stop hiding from this conflict and address it directly. Not on social media, not through lawyers, but face to face." Jessica looked alarmed. "Mom, no. Confronting them will only make things worse." "Not confronting," I clarified. "Conversation. On our terms, in a setting where they can't cause a scene or twist the narrative." "And where would that be?" Robert asked skeptically. A plan was already forming in my mind. "The Northwest Financial Partners Annual Client Appreciation Dinner. It's next week, isn't it, Jessica?" She nodded slowly. "Thursday evening at the Heathman Hotel, but I don't see—" "Diane and Greg Matthews will be there," I continued. "Tyler mentioned in one of his texts that his company has a table, and his parents are attending as guests since they're networking in Portland this week." Robert looked intrigued. "A public event with Portland's financial elite present. They wouldn't dare make a scene." "Exactly," I said. "Plus, I happen to know the event organizer quite well." I smiled at Jessica. "Your father and I have been Northwest Financial clients for 15 years. Margaret would be happy to seat us strategically." Jessica still looked uncertain. "What's the goal here? What would you even say to them?" "The truth," I said simply, in a calm, measured way that leaves no room for misinterpretation. "I'm tired of watching you suffer while they control the story." Later that night, after Jessica had gone to bed, Robert found me sitting on our back porch, staring at the stars. "You're planning something more specific than just a conversation," he observed, settling into the chair beside me. "I know that look." I smiled faintly. The Matthews family has been playing a game from the beginning, first with Jessica, then with us. They've been counting on our politeness, our desire to avoid conflict, our concern for Jessica's reputation. "And?" Robert prompted. "And I'm done playing by their rules," I said firmly. "It's time they understood exactly who they're dealing with. Robert studied me for a moment, then nodded. I'm with you. Whatever you've got planned. The night of the client appreciation dinner arrived with perfect late spring weather, warm enough for the hotel's terrace to be opened for pre-dinner cocktails. Jessica had initially resisted our plan, but eventually agreed that something needed to change. Benjamin will be there too, she mentioned casually as we prepared to leave. His firm is a partner with Northwest. Is he now? I asked innocently. How convenient. Jessica rolled her eyes but couldn't hide her smile. He's been incredibly supportive through all this. Never pushy, never judgmental, just present. He sounds like a keeper, Robert commented, adjusting his tie. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Jessica cautioned, though her expression softened. But yes, he's different, in all the right ways. We arrived at the Heathman Hotel just as the cocktail hour began. The terrace was already filling with Portland's financial community, small groups forming and reforming as people mingled. Jessica excused herself to greet colleagues while Robert and I surveyed the scene. It didn't take long to spot them. Diane Matthews stood near the bar in a too-tight silver dress, her husband beside her in an ill-fitting suit, both clutching champagne glasses and scanning the crowd with predatory focus. When they spotted Jessica across the terrace, Diane's expression hardened, and she whispered something to Greg. Here we go, Robert murmured, noticing the same thing. Before the Matthews could make a move, I spotted Benjamin approaching Jessica, greeting her with a warm smile and respectful distance that nonetheless conveyed deep affection. Even from across the terrace, I could see Jessica's posture relax in his presence. Diane noticed too. Her eyes narrowed as she watched the interaction, clearly calculating this new variable in her vendetta against Jessica. Time for us to make our move, I said to Robert, straightening my shoulders. Ready? He nodded, taking my arm. Let's go meet the in-laws that never were. We approached Diane and Greg directly, with the confident smiles of people with nothing to hide. Mr. and Mrs. Matthews, I greeted them pleasantly. I'm Eleanor Wilson, and this is my husband Robert, Jessica's parents. Diane nearly choked on her champagne. Greg's eyes darted around, looking for escape routes, but finding none in the crowded space. What do you want? Diane finally managed, her voice tight. Just a friendly conversation, I assured her, maintaining my smile. We thought it was time we met properly, given how much energy you've been devoting to our daughter lately. Greg shifted uncomfortably. This isn't the place. Actually, it's the perfect place, Robert interjected smoothly. Public, professional, plenty of witnesses. Ideal for clearing the air. Diane's artificial smile looked painful. There's nothing to discuss. Your daughter broke my son's heart and left our family with significant financial burdens. End of story. Not quite, I replied, keeping my voice low and pleasant. You see, we have a different perspective on events, one supported by text messages, bank records, and witness accounts. Greg's face paled slightly. What are you talking about? I sipped my water before continuing. We have documented evidence of your family's attempts to exploit Jessica financially, from the fake medical emergencies to the explicit texts about getting her pregnant to secure child support. Diane's eyes widened in alarm. That's absurd. Tyler already has, Robert cut in. He's provided copies of family conversations going back months, planning how to access the Wilson fortune through marriage to our daughter. This was a calculated bluff, but from their expressions, it had hit home. Tyler hadn't actually given us such documentation, but his text to Jessica had revealed enough that our claim was plausible. So here's what's going to happen, I continued pleasantly. The harassment stops today. The legal threats, the social media posts, the whisper campaign against Jessica at work. All of it ends immediately. Greg attempted to regain control. Or what? You'll sue us? Good luck proving harassment from a few Facebook posts. Oh, we wouldn't sue, I assured him. That would be so messy. Instead, we'd simply share what we know with a few key people. I gestured subtly around the terrace, where several of Portland's most influential business leaders were congregated. Lawrence Patel, Jessica's boss, for instance. Or Martin Friedman, who I believe is considering using Tyler's marketing firm for his new investment group. Diane's face had gone from pale to ashen. You wouldn't dare. We absolutely would, Robert replied calmly. You've spent weeks attempting to damage our daughter's reputation. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? I leaned in slightly. Here's the deal. You leave Jessica alone, completely alone, and we'll keep what we know private. You continue your campaign against her, and every client, colleague, and contact in your network will receive documented evidence of your family's true character. Greg's jaw clenched. This is blackmail. This is accountability, I corrected, and it's the most generous offer you're going to get. For several tense moments, we stood in silence, the cheerful cocktail conversation flowing around us, in stark contrast to our quiet confrontation. Finally, Diane spoke, her voice barely controlled. Fine, we'll stop. But don't expect us to pretend everything's fine if we run into Jessica. I don't care what you pretend, I said honestly. Just stay away from her. No more calls, no more texts, no more accidental run-ins at professional events. Greg nodded stiffly. Are we done here? Almost, Robert said. One more thing. Tyler mentioned his parents might be facing some financial challenges. Credit card debt, rental issues. Diane's face flushed with humiliation. That's none of your... You're right, I interrupted. It's none of our business. But since you've made our daughter's life so difficult these past months, we thought we'd offer a parting gesture. I reached into my clutch and withdrew an envelope, handing it to Greg. He opened it cautiously, then stared in confusion at the check inside. $5,000? He read, bewildered. Consider it a goodwill payment, Robert explained. Not because you deserve it, not because we owe you anything, but because, unlike you, we don't believe in leaving people in crisis, even difficult people. Diane looked at the check, then at us, suspicion battling with desperate need in her expression. Why would you do this? To show Jessica the difference between generosity and exploitation, I said simply. Between giving freely and taking by manipulation. It's a lesson we hope she'll remember. I glanced across the terrace to where Jessica stood with Benjamin, both of them watching our interaction with concerned expressions. I gave a subtle nod, and Jessica's shoulders relaxed visibly. The check is real, Robert assured the Matthews. No strings attached except the ones we've already discussed. Leave our daughter alone, and we can all move forward. Greg folded the check carefully and tucked it into his pocket. We'll uphold our end. Excellent, I said with genuine relief. Then I believe our business is concluded. As we turned to walk away, Diane called after me, her voice low but intense. You think you've won, don't you? That your money solves everything? I paused, turning back to meet her gaze directly. No, Diane. I think Jessica won when she finally saw your family for what it is. The money is irrelevant. As Robert and I crossed the terrace toward Jessica and Benjamin, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. We'd taken a risk, confronting the Matthews so directly, but sometimes directness is the only language certain people understand. Jessica met us halfway, her expression a mix of concern and relief. What happened? They looked shell-shocked. Let's just say we came to an understanding, Robert explained, keeping his tone light. I think your Matthews family problem is officially solved. Benjamin, standing respectfully at Jessica's side, raised an eyebrow. Do I want to know how you managed that? I smiled. Probably not. But it was entirely legal and, surprisingly, civilized. Jessica studied our faces carefully. Mom, what did you do? What any mother would do, I replied simply. I protected my daughter, and perhaps taught a lesson about the difference between true generosity and self-serving manipulation. Understanding dawned in Jessica's eyes. The check in your purse. You gave them money? I nodded. A small amount, enough to help with immediate needs, not enough to solve their larger problems. Why would you do that after everything they've done? Jessica asked, genuinely puzzled. Because it allows us to close this chapter with grace instead of bitterness, I explained. And because someday, when you look back on this difficult time, I want you to remember that your response to cruelty can reveal more about your character than the cruelty itself. Benjamin's expression reflected new appreciation as he looked at me. That's remarkably wise. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I don't know if I could have done that in your position. You could, I assured her. Because beneath all the pain and confusion of these past months, you're still the compassionate, thoughtful daughter we raised. You just needed to remember who you are. As the dinner chimes sounded, calling guests to their tables, I watched Jessica and Benjamin walk ahead of us, their conversation animated and comfortable. Robert squeezed my hand. Think we've seen the last of the Matthews family? He asked quietly. I glanced back at Diane and Greg, now sitting stiffly at their assigned table, the envelope with our check clutched tightly in Greg's hand. I think so, I replied. Some people only understand boundaries when they're absolutely clear. Robert chuckled. And you certainly made those boundaries crystal clear. As we took our seats at the elegantly appointed table, I felt a deep satisfaction watching Jessica across the room, laughing at something Benjamin had said, her expression lighter than it had been in months. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever lessons still needed learning, I knew this particular storm had passed. And sometimes, that's victory enough. 3 months passed with blissful silence from the Matthews family. Our check had been cashed, within days of the client appreciation dinner, but there had been no acknowledgement, no note of thanks, not that we expected one. What mattered was the absence. No more threatening letters, no more social media attacks, no more whispers undermining Jessica's professional reputation. She was finally free to move forward, and forward she moved, with remarkable resilience. Summer arrived in Portland with unusual warmth and clarity, the city's typically moody skies giving way to consistent sunshine that seemed to mirror Jessica's brightening outlook. She continued living with us, though her presence in our home had shifted from a retreat to a purposeful transition. She spoke of looking for her own place again, this time without the pressure of accommodating a partner's family or expectations. I'm thinking about a condo in the Pearl District, she mentioned one evening as we sat on the back deck, enjoying the lingering twilight. Something small but mine. A fresh start. Robert nodded approvingly. The market there is strong. Good investment. She smiled. It's not just about the investment. I need to reclaim my independence, rebuild on my own terms. I studied my daughter's face, noting how the shadows had lifted from her eyes, how her posture had straightened from the hunched defensiveness of recent months. You seem more like yourself lately. I feel more like myself, she agreed, maybe even a better version. She took a thoughtful sip of her wine. I've been thinking a lot about what happened with Tyler, trying to understand my part in it. Your part? Robert questioned. You weren't responsible for their behavior. No, Jessica acknowledged, but I was responsible for ignoring red flags, for prioritizing belonging over self-respect. She set her glass down with deliberate care. The therapist helped me see how I've always sought validation through taking care of others, even when it wasn't healthy. I felt a flutter of discomfort. Had our parenting somehow contributed to this pattern? We always taught you to be generous, I said carefully. You did, Jessica assured me. But somewhere along the way, I started equating generosity with worth, as if I only mattered if I was useful to someone. She gave a rueful smile. Classic eldest daughter syndrome, apparently. Robert leaned forward. And now? Now, I'm learning to distinguish between healthy giving and self-sacrifice, she replied. Between genuine connection and codependency. Her phone buzzed on the table, and her expression softened as she checked it. Benjamin, she explained simply. How are things going there? I asked, trying to sound casual despite my intense curiosity. Jessica had been seeing Benjamin regularly since the night of the awards dinner, but she kept the details private, protective of this new relationship in a way she never had been with Tyler. Good, she said, typing a quick response before setting the phone down. Really good, actually. He's… She paused, searching for the right words. Patient. Respectful. We're taking things slowly. That's wise, Robert commented. After everything that happened. Jessica nodded. Benjamin understands that I'm still processing. He never pushes. For more than I'm ready to give. Her expression turned thoughtful. It's strange, actually. With Tyler, everything was so urgent. Moving in together after 3 months, engagement after a year, constant talk about our future. With Benjamin, it's all about the present, getting to know each other fully before making any plans. That sounds healthy, I observed, carefully neutral despite my growing appreciation for this man who seemed to understand exactly what Jessica needed. It is, she agreed. And also, she hesitated, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. He's invited me to dinner with his mother this weekend. Robert and I exchanged glances. That's a big step, I noted. It is, Jessica admitted. But it feels right. Martha, that's his mom, has apparently been asking to meet me for weeks, but he waited until I mentioned being curious about her. She smiled. He says she's formidable, but fair, which makes me nervous and excited at the same time. I recognized the mixture of anticipation and anxiety in her expression. Meeting a partner's parents carried weight, especially after her experience with the Matthews family. What can you tell us about her? She's a retired literature professor from Reed College, Jessica explained. Widowed about 18 months ago. Benjamin says they've always been close, but they've gotten closer since his father died. She fidgeted with her napkin. Apparently, she's quite direct, not one for small talk or pretense. Sounds intimidating, Robert observed. A little, Jessica agreed, but also refreshing after Diane's passive-aggressive manipulations. I smiled. When is dinner? Saturday evening at her home in Irvington. Jessica took a deep breath. I'm nervous, but not in the way I was with Tyler's family. That was anxiety about measuring up to impossible expectations. This is more. Wanting to make a good impression on someone who matters to Benjamin. That's how it should be, I told her. Healthy nervousness, not fear. The night of Jessica's dinner with Benjamin and his mother, Robert and I tried to distract ourselves with a movie, but I found my attention drifting repeatedly to the clock, wondering how the evening was progressing. Jessica had left dressed simply but elegantly in a blue dress that brought out her eyes, carrying a bouquet of fresh flowers and a bottle of good wine. Traditional gestures that nonetheless revealed her desire to make a positive impression. She'll be fine, Robert assured me, noticing my distraction. Benjamin seems like a good man, and Jessica has better judgment now. I know, I agreed, forcing my attention back to the screen. It's just hard not to worry after everything that happened with the Matthews. Robert squeezed my hand. Not all families are like them, thank goodness. It was nearly 11 when we heard Jessica's key in the lock. She entered quietly, setting down her purse and slipping off her shoes before noticing us still up, pretending, to be casually watching late-night television. "How transparent are we?" Robert asked with a self-deprecating smile. Jessica laughed. "Completely. Were you waiting up for me like I'm 16 again?" "Maybe a little," I admitted. "How did it go?" She sank into the armchair across from us, tucking her feet underneath her. "It was." She paused, searching for the right word. "Illuminating." "Illuminating good or illuminating bad?" Robert asked. "Illuminating unexpected," Jessica clarified. "Martha is nothing like I imagined. I was picturing a formal academic type, maybe a bit intimidating, given her background." "And she's not?" I prompted. Jessica shook her head, smiling. She greeted me wearing jeans and a vintage Rolling Stones t-shirt with paint in her hair. Turns out she's taken up abstract art since retiring. Her dining room has been converted into a studio, so we ate dinner on the patio instead. "That does sound unexpected," Robert commented. "The whole evening was like that," Jessica continued. "She asked direct questions, but never invasive ones. Wanted to know about my work, my interests, my thoughts on current events. Not once did she mention marriage, grandchildren, or my family's financial situation. I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. That must have been refreshing." "It was," Jessica agreed fervently. At one point, Benjamin stepped inside to take a work call, and I braced myself for the "what are your intentions with my son" conversation. Instead, she asked me if I'd read Joan Didion, and then launched into this fascinating analysis of female resilience in literature. "She sounds remarkable," I said sincerely. Jessica nodded. "She is." But the most striking thing happened at the end of the evening. When Benjamin stepped away to get our coats, Martha took my hand and said, "I like you, Jessica. You have depths my son can explore for a lifetime. But more importantly, you seem to recognize his depths too." The simple profundity of the statement hung in the air between us. "That's lovely," I finally said. "And insightful." "It was the opposite of everything with Tyler's family," Jessica reflected. "They never saw me as a person, just as a resource. Martha sees me as me." She fell silent, lost in thought for a moment. Then she straightened, a new resolve in her expression. "I've made a decision. I'm going to make an offer on that condo in the Pearl tomorrow." Robert raised his eyebrows. "That's sudden." "It feels right," Jessica explained. "Tonight made me realize I'm ready for the next chapter. I've been hesitating, partly out of fear, partly out of comfort. But I need my own space again, to continue healing and growing." I studied my daughter's face, recognizing the quiet determination that had always been her strength, even when temporarily obscured by doubt or pain. "We'll support whatever you decide, you know that." She smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I do know that, and it makes all the difference." The following week was a whirlwind of activity as Jessica's offer on the condo was accepted and the process of securing financing and scheduling inspections began. She approached the purchase with a methodical thoroughness that was new, researching the building's history, questioning the inspector in detail, reviewing the homeowners association documents with careful attention. No detail was too small for consideration. "You're being impressively thorough," I observed as we sorted through her belongings one evening, deciding what would move to the new place and what would be donated or discarded. Jessica looked up from the box she was packing. "I'm trying to make decisions based on complete information now, not wishful thinking or pressure." She placed a framed photo of the three of us into the keep pile. "I've been too easily swayed by emotions in the past." "There's nothing wrong with emotions," I reminded her. "They're important signposts." "True," she acknowledged. "But they need to be balanced with clear-eyed assessment." She held up a decorative vase Tyler had given her for Christmas, studying it briefly before placing it decisively in the donation box. I'm learning to trust my instincts again, but verify them with facts. I watched her methodical sorting, recognizing the healing that was happening through this seemingly mundane process. Each item considered, each decision made, represented a reclaiming of agency, a rebuilding of trust in her own judgment. Benjamin's been helping me research appliances for the kitchen, she mentioned casually. He has strong opinions about coffee makers. I smiled at the domesticity of the comment. Is he excited about your new place? Jessica nodded, then hesitated. He actually asked if I'd considered us living together there. My heart skipped a beat. That's significant. It is, she agreed. But I told him I need this place to be mine first. That I need to reestablish my independence before considering sharing space again. How did he take that? I asked carefully. With complete understanding, Jessica replied, her expression softening. He said he'd rather wait until the timing was right for both of us than rush into something that might undermine what we're building. She folded a sweater with precise movements. That's when I knew. Knew what? I prompted when she didn't continue. She looked up, her eyes clear and certain. That I'm falling in love with him. Not the desperate, anxious attachment I had with Tyler, but something steadier, more grounded. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, hearing the healthy discernment in her voice. I'm happy for you. Sweetheart, Jessica nodded, returning to her sorting. It's still early. We have time. That's the difference. With Tyler, everything felt rushed, like we had to lock things down before they fell apart. With Benjamin, there's peace. Like we can let things unfold naturally. 2 weeks later, on a brilliant August afternoon, we helped Jessica move into her new condo. The space was modest but beautiful, an open-concept living area with tall windows overlooking the Willamette River, a small but efficient kitchen, and a primary bedroom with an ensuite bath. It was entirely hers, chosen with careful deliberation, financed with her own savings and a sensible mortgage she could easily afford on her salary. Benjamin arrived to help with the heavy lifting, bringing his mother Martha along. The older woman immediately endeared herself to me by producing a picnic basket filled with homemade sandwiches and cold drinks for the movers and family. Moving day sustenance, she announced cheerfully. Can't unpack on an empty stomach. As the day progressed, I found myself working alongside Martha, unpacking kitchen items while Jessica and the men assembled furniture. I'd been somewhat nervous about meeting Benjamin's mother, wondering if she would measure us against some invisible standard. Instead, I found her refreshingly straightforward and warm. Benjamin tells me you handled Jessica's ex's family with impressive backbone, she commented as we arranged dishes in cabinets. Good for you. Some people only understand firm boundaries. I glanced at her, surprised by the direct reference to the Matthews situation. You know about all that? Martha nodded, handing me a stack of plates. Jessica told me herself when I asked about her previous relationship. Very forthright about the whole mess, including her own blind spots. She smiled. That's when I knew she was right for my son. Self-awareness is rare. It's been a difficult journey for her, I admitted. For all of us. The difficult journeys are usually the most worthwhile, Martha observed. Benjamin's father and I had our challenges too. His family never quite accepted me. Thought he was marrying beneath him because my parents were immigrants without college educations. That must have been painful, I said, feeling an unexpected kinship with this straight-talking woman. It was, she agreed matter-of-factly. But William stood his ground, made it clear that I was his choice and they could either accept that or see less of him. Her eyes crinkled with fond remembrance. 42 years we had together. His parents eventually came around, though his mother never did stop, helpfully, sending me articles about proper table settings for formal dinners. I laughed, recognizing the universal language of passive-aggressive in-laws. How did you handle it? Use the articles to line the birdcage, Martha replied with a mischievous grin, and made sure to serve William's mother with the salad fork whenever she visited. She arranged a set of glasses with precise movements. Life's too short for pretense, Eleanor. I learned that early. By evening, the condo had taken shape, with the essential furniture assembled and the kitchen fully functional. We ordered pizza and sat around Jessica's new dining table, the conversation flowing easily among this unexpected gathering of two families beginning to intertwine. I watched Jessica across the table, animated as she described her plans for the small balcony, Benjamin beside her offering suggestions, their comfortable dynamic evident in every interaction. Robert caught my eye, a subtle nod acknowledging what we were both thinking. This was right in a way Tyler had never been. When it was time to leave, Jessica walked us to the door, hugging each of us tightly. Thank you for everything. Not just today, but everything. That's what family does, Robert told her. The real kind, anyway. Martha, overhearing, nodded approvingly. Indeed it is. She turned to Jessica. Your home is lovely, my dear. It suits you. Thank you, Jessica replied warmly, for helping today and for the amazing picnic lunch. Next time I'll bring my famous lasagna, Martha promised. Family recipe. Benjamin can attest it's worth showing up for. The casual inclusion of Jessica in next time and the natural way Martha referred to family wasn't lost on any of us. As we said our goodbyes, I felt a profound sense of rightness about the direction my daughter's life was taking. On the drive home, Robert and I were unusually quiet, processing the day's events and the milestone they represented. She'll be okay, Robert finally said as we turned onto our street. Better than okay. I know, I agreed, realizing I truly believed it. She's found her footing again. And Benjamin seems solid, he added, respectful without being passive, strong without being controlling. Martha's a character, I said with admiration. No wonder Benjamin turned out well. Robert chuckled. I liked how she called out Jessica's supervisor at one point for that underhanded comment about women in finance. Didn't even blink, just looked him in the eye and said, That's a remarkably outdated perspective for someone who claims to be innovative. Jessica needs that kind of straight-talking ally in her life, I observed. We all do. The following weekend, Jessica invited us to dinner at her condo, her first official hosting in the new space. She seemed relaxed and confident as she moved around her kitchen, preparing a simple but elegant meal of roasted salmon, quinoa salad, and fresh vegetables. Benjamin assisted with easy competence, their movements around each other suggesting a growing comfort and familiarity. They're good together, Robert murmured to me as we sat on the balcony with pre-dinner drinks, watching the two of them through the glass doors. Like dance partners who naturally adjust to each other's movements. Without one person always having to lead, I noted, thinking of Jessica's relationship with Tyler, where she had constantly adapted to his family's demands, contorting herself to fit their expectations. As we sat down to dinner, Jessica raised her glass in a toast to new beginnings and to the people who help make them possible. We clinked glasses, the simple sentiment striking a chord with all of us. The conversation flowed easily, touching on work, current events, books, and films, the comfortable exchange of people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Midway through the meal, Benjamin's phone buzzed. He checked it quickly, his expression changing to one of concern. I'm sorry, I need to take this. It's the nursing home where my aunt lives. He stepped onto the balcony for privacy, and Jessica explained. His Aunt Sophia has dementia. She raised him for several years when his parents were working abroad. He visits her every week, though she rarely recognizes him now. I was touched by this glimpse into Benjamin's character, his loyalty to family, his willingness to maintain connection even when painful. When he returned a few minutes later, his face was troubled. "Everything okay?" Jessica asked softly. He shook his head slightly. "Aunt Sophia had a fall. Nothing broken, but they've moved her to a different wing for more supervision. She's agitated, asking for my father." He hesitated. "I should probably go see her tonight." "Of course," Jessica said immediately. "We can finish dinner another time." "I hate to cut the evening short," Benjamin apologized to all of us. "Family comes first," Robert said simply. "Always." Benjamin looked at Jessica. Would you want to come with me? She might not know who either of us is, but sometimes new faces distract her when she's upset." I watched my daughter's face, noting the slight surprise followed by determination. This wasn't a glamorous date night or an easy ask. It was real life, messy, and difficult. "I'd like to meet her," Jessica said firmly. "Let me just pack up the food so it doesn't go to waste." As they prepared to leave, I pulled Jessica aside for a brief hug. "Call us tomorrow?" She nodded. "I will. Sorry about dinner." "Don't be," I assured her. "This is what matters. How people show up for each other when things are difficult, not just when everything's perfect." After they left, Robert and I helped clean up the remaining dishes before heading home ourselves. In the car, I found myself reflecting on the evening's unexpected turn. "You know what struck me most?" I said. How naturally Benjamin included Jessica in something painful and personal. No pretense, no performance, just real life. Robert nodded. And how readily she stepped up. No hesitation, no resentment at the interrupted evening. That's what was missing with Tyler, I realized. Authenticity. With him and his family, everything was a calculation, a transaction. There was always an agenda beneath the surface. The next morning, Jessica called as promised. Aunt Sophia was having a rough night, she reported. Kept asking for people who passed away years ago. But Benjamin was amazing with her, so patient and gentle. "How did you feel being there?" I asked. "Honestly, it was hard," Jessica admitted. "Seeing someone so vulnerable, so confused, but also important somehow." Benjamin apologized afterward for subjecting me to such a difficult evening, and I told him he never needed to apologize for caring for family. I heard the conviction in her voice, the clarity of purpose. "You're building something real," I observed. "We are," she agreed, step by step, with open eyes. That fall, as Portland's trees turned brilliant shades of gold and crimson, Jessica settled fully into her independent life. Her condo became a reflection of her renewed sense of self, thoughtfully decorated, organized without being rigid, warm and inviting rather than designed to impress. She hosted small dinner parties, joined a book club, started taking early morning runs along the riverfront. The shadows that had haunted her eyes after the broken engagement faded completely, replaced by a quiet confidence that was beautiful to witness. Benjamin remained a consistent presence, their relationship deepening gradually without the rushed intensity that had characterized her time with Tyler. They established comfortable routines, Sunday brunches at her place, Wednesday, evening walks through different Portland neighborhoods, occasional weekend trips to the coast or mountains. He kept a toothbrush at her condo but maintained his own apartment, respecting her need for personal space and independence. One rainy October evening, Jessica called and asked if she could stop by. Something in her voice, not distress, but a contained excitement, made me curious. She arrived 30 minutes later, raindrops glistening in her hair, her cheeks flushed from the cool air, or perhaps from something more. "I have news," she announced without preamble as she hung up her coat. "Professional news." Robert looked up from his laptop. "Good news, I hope." Jessica nodded, her smile breaking through. I've been offered a promotion. Senior investment strategist with a significant raise and my own team to manage. That's wonderful, I exclaimed, genuinely thrilled. Jessica had worked incredibly hard at Northwest Financial, particularly during the difficult months following her broken engagement when she'd had to rebuild professional relationships damaged by the Matthews family's whisper campaign. There's more, she continued, perching on the edge of the sofa. The position is at their Seattle office. They're expanding their sustainable investment division there, and they want me to help build it from the ground up. I felt my smile falter, slightly. Seattle? That's a big move. Jessica nodded, her expression a mixture of excitement and apprehension. It's an amazing opportunity. The kind that doesn't come around often, especially for someone my age. When would you need to decide? Robert asked, always practical. They've given me 2 weeks, Jessica replied. I'd start after the new year if I accept. I tried to process this unexpected development. Seattle wasn't terribly far, a 3-hour drive or a short flight, but it wasn't Portland. It wasn't having Jessica 20 minutes away for impromptu dinners or weekend gardening sessions. What about your condo? I asked. You've only just settled in. I could sell it or possibly rent it out, Jessica said. The market is strong. Robert leaned forward. And what does Benjamin think about all this? The question hung in the air as Jessica took a deep breath. That's the other part of why I came over tonight. Benjamin and I had a long talk after I received the offer letter. My heart squeezed with sudden concern. Was this promotion going to force a difficult choice between career advancement and a promising relationship? He's incredibly supportive. Of the opportunity, Jessica continued, said it's perfect for my skills and interests. That's good, I said cautiously, but long-distance relationships can be challenging. A small smile played at the corners of Jessica's mouth. That's what we discussed. Benjamin's firm has a Seattle office too. Smaller than their Portland headquarters, but established. He spoke with his director this morning, and they're open to transferring him if he decides that's what he wants. He'd consider moving for you? Robert asked, a note of respect in his voice. Jessica nodded. He said, and I quote, "Great relationships require flexibility from both people. Sometimes that means geography." She twisted her hands in her lap. But we both agreed we need to make these decisions separately first, then together. I need to decide if this job is right for me regardless of what he does, and he needs to determine if a transfer makes sense for his career, not just for us. I felt a rush of admiration for this mature approach. That's incredibly wise. We've learned from our mistakes, Jessica said simply. Both of us have been in relationships where one person sacrificed too much. She looked between us. So, what do you think? About the job, I mean. Robert and I exchanged glances. I think, I said carefully, that you need to make this decision based on what's right for your future, not what's convenient for us. We'll miss seeing you as often, Robert added. But Seattle isn't the moon. We'll visit. You'll visit. Jessica's shoulders relaxed slightly. I was worried you'd be upset. Disappointed to have you further away? Yes, I admitted. But upset that you're being recognized for your talents and given a chance to grow? Never. She smiled, relief, evident in her expression. I think I'm going to accept it. It feels right. Then it probably is, Robert said simply. Jessica stood, moving to hug each of us in turn. I love you both. Thank you for supporting me through everything. The Tyler disaster, the healing process, and now this new chapter. As I held my daughter close, I was struck by how different this conversation was from our interactions just a year earlier. No defensiveness, no hidden agendas, no manipulation, just honest communication and mutual respect. We're proud of you, I whispered against her hair. So proud. Later that night, after Jessica had left, Robert and I sat on the back porch, sharing a bottle of wine despite the cool evening air. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a glistening world and the fresh scent of wet earth. "Our daughter's moving to Seattle," Robert mused, gazing up at the clearing night sky. "Didn't see that coming." I smiled, leaning into his warmth. "Life rarely goes according to plan. Thank goodness for that," he replied. "If it had, she might be married to Tyler now, with his entire family installed in that house, making her miserable." I shuddered at the thought. Sometimes what feels like a disaster turns out to be a rescue. Robert nodded thoughtfully. "You know, when Jessica first brought Tyler home, I had this uneasy feeling I couldn't quite place. Nothing concrete, just a sense that something wasn't quite right." "I remember," I said. "You said he seemed too perfect, like he was playing a role." And then at that dinner, when they seated us at the children's table, Robert shook his head. It was so outrageous, so disrespectful, that it finally brought everything into focus. "The most honest moment of their entire relationship," I observed, "when they finally showed us exactly who they were and what they thought of us." Robert took my hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles against my skin. "I'm grateful for that children's table, as humiliating as it was at the time. It saved our daughter from a terrible mistake." I squeezed his hand, thinking of Jessica's journey over the past year, from the brink of a disastrous marriage to a woman newly confident in her worth, her judgment, her future. "To children's tables," I said softly, raising my wine glass, "and to the painful clarity they sometimes bring." Robert clinked his glass against mine. "To painful clarity, and to second chances." As we sat in comfortable silence, watching the clouds part to reveal a sprinkling of stars, I felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the disaster averted, but for the growth that had followed. Jessica was stronger now, wiser, more discerning. She had faced manipulation and entitlement with courage, reclaimed her sense of self, and opened her heart to authentic connection. And perhaps most importantly, she had learned to trust herself again, to recognize the difference between genuine love and calculated interest, between healthy compromise and dangerous self-sacrifice. Whatever the future held in Seattle, whatever path her relationship with Benjamin took, I knew she would face it with clear eyes and a strong sense of her own worth. Some lessons come at a high price, but watching my daughter evolve from the painful experience of nearly marrying into a family that valued her only for what she could provide, I knew the cost had been worth it. The woman who emerged from that crucible was magnificent, compassionate without being exploitable, generous without being a doormat, loving without losing herself. And sitting there under the stars with Robert, I realized that in its own strange way, being relegated to the children's table had been a gift, the uncomfortable awakening that set everything else in motion. Sometimes the most important revelations come wrapped in the most unexpected packages. The holidays arrived in a flurry of activity and emotion. Jessica had accepted the Seattle position, beginning in January, and her decision set numerous wheels in motion. Her condo sold quickly, Portland's market remained competitive despite the winter season, and she began the process of packing up a home she'd only just settled into. Benjamin, after careful consideration and several discussions with his firm, had also arranged a transfer to their Seattle office, though he insisted on maintaining his own apartment there, at least initially. "We're moving to the same city, but not moving in together yet," Jessica explained when she came over to borrow some extra boxes. "It feels right to preserve some independence as we both adjust to new jobs and a new city." I admired their thoughtfulness, the way they balanced closeness with healthy boundaries. It was worlds away from Tyler's approach, which had treated Jessica's independence as an obstacle to overcome rather than a strength to respect. As Christmas approached, Jessica spent increasingly more time at our house, using it as a base of operations while her condo emptied and her Seattle arrangements fell into place. One evening, as we decorated the tree together, a tradition since her childhood, she grew unusually quiet, methodically hanging ornaments with careful precision. "Something on your mind?" I asked, handing her a delicate glass bird we'd purchased during a family trip to Vermont years ago. She accepted the ornament, turning it gently in her hands before finding the perfect branch. "I've been thinking about last Christmas. How different everything was." I nodded, remembering. Last December had been tense and complicated. The engagement, still fresh, the Matthews family already showing troubling signs that we'd tried to minimize for Jessica's sake. There had been awkward gift exchanges, strained holiday meals, constant negotiations about which family deserved more time and attention. "Tyler's mother sent me a text yesterday," Jessica said quietly, surprising me completely. First contact. In nearly 6 months. My body tensed. What did she want? Jessica reached for another ornament, a small ceramic star she'd made in elementary school, her tiny handprint pressed into the back. To apologize, apparently. Said she's been in therapy, realized how her behavior affected others. She asked if we could meet for coffee sometime before I leave for Seattle. I carefully kept my expression neutral. "How do you feel about that?" Jessica was silent for a long moment, delicately adjusting the position of the star. Confused, skeptical, a little curious. She turned to face me. "What would you do?" The direct question caught me off guard. Jessica rarely sought my explicit advice anymore, preferring to process decisions independently or with Benjamin. That she was asking now signaled the importance of this unexpected development. "I think," I said slowly, "I'd want to be sure her motives are genuine. Is this about her growth or about easing her conscience? Does she want your forgiveness or just to feel better about herself?" Jessica nodded thoughtfully. That's what Benjamin said too. He wasn't opposed to the idea, but suggested meeting in a public place, keeping it brief, and being clear about my boundaries. "Wise counsel," I acknowledged, increasingly impressed with Benjamin's balanced perspective. "Has Tyler reached out as well?" "No," Jessica replied. According to Diane, he moved to California in October, started fresh with a marketing firm in San Diego. She hung another ornament before adding, "She said he's doing well, dating someone new." I studied my daughter's face for any sign of lingering attachment, but saw only mild curiosity, the kind one might feel about any former acquaintance. "Does that bother you?" Jessica considered the question seriously. "It doesn't hurt if that's what you're asking. Actually, I hope he's found someone who genuinely fits his life, not just someone his family can use." She smiled wryly. "Everyone deserves that, even Tyler." 2 days before Christmas, Jessica met Diane Matthews at a busy downtown cafe. She'd declined my offer to accompany her, wanting to handle this final interaction on her own terms. I spent the hour anxiously reorganizing the hall closet, jumping every time my phone buzzed. When Jessica finally returned, her expression was contemplative rather than distressed. She hung up her coat and joined me in the kitchen, where I was pretending to be casually preparing dinner rather than waiting on tenterhooks. "How did it go?" I asked, unable to contain my curiosity any longer. Jessica poured herself a cup of coffee before answering. "It was illuminating. Diane's changed, or at least she's trying to." She took a thoughtful sip. She apologized, specifically, and without excuses. For the children's table, for trying to take advantage of our generosity, for the harassment afterward. "That must have been unexpected," I observed, recalling Diane's previous inability to acknowledge any wrongdoing. "It was," Jessica agreed. She said losing Tyler to California was a wake-up call. He apparently told her that her behavior had cost him a chance at happiness, and that he couldn't keep letting her control his life. She smiled faintly. He's in therapy too, learning to set boundaries with his family. I felt a surprising twinge of respect for Tyler, who had finally found the courage to confront the unhealthy dynamics that had shaped him. That's significant growth. It is, Jessica acknowledged. Diane is still Diane. She mentioned her new therapist lives in an absolutely gorgeous house in Lake Oswego and seems overly impressed by his credentials. But there's a self-awareness now that wasn't there before. Did the meeting give you what you needed? I asked, focusing on what mattered most, Jessica's well-being. She thought for a moment. It did, actually. Not because I needed her apology, but because it confirmed I've moved past it all. I felt compassion for her, but no attachment. No anger either. Just a clear sense that our paths crossed for a reason, taught me important lessons, and now are rightfully diverging. I squeezed her hand, deeply proud of the wisdom she'd developed through this difficult journey. Closure is a gift you give yourself, I said softly. Not something others can provide. Jessica nodded. Exactly. And I'm ready to close this chapter completely. Christmas Day arrived with unexpected sunshine breaking through Portland's typical winter clouds. Jessica had invited Benjamin and Martha to join our family celebration, expanding our usual intimate gathering into something new yet comfortable. Martha arrived bearing homemade cinnamon rolls and a bottle of champagne for mimosas, because Christmas morning deserves sparkle. The day unfolded with easy warmth, gifts exchanged without extravagance but with thoughtful consideration, a relaxed meal where conversation flowed naturally, board games by the fire as the early winter dusk settled around the house. I watched Jessica and Benjamin, noting their comfortable physical ease with each other, the casual touch of his hand at the small of her back as they moved through the kitchen, the way she absently played with his fingers while concentrating on her Scrabble tiles. This was what love should look like, I thought. Not desperate grasping or calculated advantage, but steady companionship, mutual respect, shared laughter. After dinner, as Robert and Benjamin tackled the dishes and Martha dozed gently in the armchair by the fire, Jessica drew me outside onto the back porch. The evening was cold, but still, the garden silvered with frost under a clear sky scattered with stars. I wanted to thank you, she said, her breath clouding in the winter air, for everything this past year, for seeing what I couldn't see, for standing firm when I was wavering, for giving me space to make my own decisions, even my own mistakes. I wrapped my arms around myself against the chill. That's what parents do, or try to, anyway. Jessica shook her head. Not all parents. Some try to control, some enable, some defend their children even when they're wrong. She met my gaze directly. You and Dad found the balance between protection and freedom. I don't think I fully appreciated how rare that is until recently. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, touched by her recognition. We made plenty of mistakes along the way. Maybe, she acknowledged with a smile. But the important thing is you were always on my side without being blind to my flaws. You saw Tyler's family for what they were without demonizing them. You helped me find my way back to myself. We stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching our breath mist in the cold air. I have something to show you, Jessica said, finally reaching into her pocket. She withdrew a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a delicate ring with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. Benjamin gave me this yesterday. My heart skipped a beat. Is that not an engagement ring? Jessica clarified quickly. A promise. He said it belonged to his grandmother, who gave it to his grandfather when they'd been dating 6 months as a symbol of her commitment to their relationship while maintaining her independence. I studied the vintage ring, noting its understated elegance. It's beautiful. The pearl represents transformation through difficulty, Jessica explained, slipping it onto her right hand. How adversity creates something precious over time. She smiled. Martha helped him choose it from the family jewelry, said it was perfect for me. She was right, I agreed, touched by the thoughtfulness behind the gift and what it represented. Not possession or status, but partnership and growth. Jessica carefully tucked her hand back into her pocket against the cold. Benjamin and I have talked about the future, not making definite plans yet, but exploring possibilities. He understands I need time, that I'm still healing in some ways. And you? What do you want for your future? I asked. She gazed out at the frost-covered garden, considering the question. To build something authentic. A relationship based on mutual support rather than dependency. A career that challenges me. A life that balances connection with autonomy. She turned back to me, her expression serene. I want to create something beautiful from everything I've learned, even the painful parts. Inside, we could hear laughter, as Benjamin and Robert apparently discovered Martha's competitive streak during a game of cards. The sound drifted through the windows like music, binding our separate family threads into something new and harmonious. I think you're already creating that beauty, I told her softly. Every day, with every choice you make. The first week of January arrived cold and clear, the day of Jessica's departure for Seattle, dawning with crystalline brightness that belied the emotional weight of the occasion. Her car was packed, her new apartment awaiting her arrival, her future stretching northward like an unwritten story. Benjamin had gone up 2 days earlier to start his own transition, planning to drive back down to accompany Jessica on her journey. We stood in the driveway, that liminal space of departures and returns, none of us quite ready for the final goodbye. The condo is all set, Robert told her, his voice carefully steady. Building manager has the keys and will meet you at 4. Jessica nodded. And my first day isn't until Monday, so I have the weekend to settle in. Benjamin mentioned having some basics already stocked in your kitchen, I added, so you won't have to grocery shop immediately. These practical details were our way of managing the emotion of the moment, focusing on tangible preparations rather than the impending separation. We'd done this before, of course, when Jessica left for college, when she took her first apartment. But this felt different. Not just a new location, but a new chapter, one shaped by all that had transpired over the past tumultuous year. I should get on the road, Jessica said finally, glancing at her watch. Traffic through Olympia can be unpredictable. Robert moved first, wrapping her in a fierce hug. We're so proud of you, Jess. So proud. When it was my turn, I held her. Close, memorizing the feel of her in my arms. Call when you arrive, I murmured against her hair. And remember, we're only 3 hours away. Anytime, for anything. Jessica nodded against my shoulder. I know, Mom. I'll be home for dinner some Sunday soon, I promise. As she got into her car and pulled away, waving until she turned the corner, I felt Robert's arm come around my waist, steadying me. She'll be fine, he assured me. Better than fine. I know, I replied, leaning into his strength. That's not why I'm crying. He understood, as he always did. I wasn't crying from worry, but from pride, from the bittersweet recognition of my daughter's complete emergence into her own life, on her own terms. The tears were for the journey, both hers and ours as her parents, through the difficult terrain of the past year to this moment of hard-won clarity. 6 months later, on a perfect summer evening, Robert and I hosted a small gathering in our backyard. Jessica and Benjamin had driven down from Seattle for the weekend, bringing Martha and a few close friends. The occasion was ostensibly to celebrate our wedding anniversary, but there was an undercurrent of anticipation that suggested something more. The garden was at its peak, roses climbing the trellis, hydrangeas heavy with blue blooms, fairy lights. strung through the trees, casting a gentle glow as dusk settled. We'd set up tables on the lawn, covered them with white cloths, and scattered them with flowers and candles. Simple, elegant, intimate, exactly as we'd planned. Jessica looked radiant. In a simple blue dress, her hair loosely curled, the pearl promise ring still gleaming on her right hand. Benjamin stayed close to her side, handsome in a lightweight suit, occasionally exchanging glances with her that spoke volumes about their deepening connection. After dinner, as we lingered over coffee and dessert, Benjamin stood and gently tapped, his glass for attention. "I'd like to propose a toast," he began, his voice steady, though I detected a slight nervousness beneath. "To Robert and Eleanor, whose 40 years of marriage show us all what partnership truly means. Your commitment to each other, your respect for each other's independence while maintaining deep connection, has been an inspiration, not just to Jessica, but to me as well." He raised his glass. "To 40 years of building something beautiful. Together." Everyone lifted their glasses, murmuring agreement. But Benjamin wasn't finished. "And if you'll indulge me," he continued, turning to face Jessica, "there's something I'd like to ask, fittingly in the presence of people who understand the true meaning of family." Jessica's eyes widened as Benjamin set down his glass and took both her hands in his. "This past year has taught us both so much about what matters in a relationship," he said softly, though in the hushed garden, every word carried clearly. "About the difference between possession and partnership, between dependency and support, between rushing and building steadily." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box, different from the one that had held the pearl promise ring. "Jessica Wilson, I love your strength, your compassion, your integrity, your humor. I love who you are on your own terms, and who we are together. I don't want to own your future or direct it. I want to share it, day by day, challenge by challenge, joy by joy." He opened the box to reveal a simple but stunning ring, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds in an antique setting. This was my grandmother's engagement ring. She was an independent spirit who built an equal partnership with my grandfather. "Martha thought you should have it, and I agree." He took a deep breath. "Jessica, will you marry me? Not to complete you, or change you, but to walk alongside you for all the days we're given." The garden fell completely silent as Jessica looked from the ring to Benjamin's face, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Yes," she said simply. "With my whole heart, yes." As Benjamin slipped the ring onto her finger, her left hand this time, applause and cheers erupted around us. Martha wiped away tears, while Robert squeezed my hand so tightly I nearly lost circulation. It was perfect. Not a showy public spectacle, but an intimate moment shared with those who had supported their journey. Later, as the celebration continued, around us, Jessica found a moment to pull me aside. "Are you happy, Mom?" she asked, the sapphire catching the light as she gestured. "Incredibly," I assured her. "Benjamin is everything we could have hoped for you to find." She smiled, glancing across the garden to where her fiancé was deep in conversation with Robert, both men laughing at something Martha had said. "He's wonderful, isn't he?" "But that's not actually what I meant." I raised an eyebrow in question. "I meant, are you happy with how everything turned out? Even the difficult parts?" Jessica clarified. "If I hadn't seated you at that children's table, if Tyler's family hadn't shown their true colors so dramatically, I might have married into a situation that would have slowly destroyed me." I considered her words thoughtfully. "I would never choose pain for you, Jess, but sometimes—" I paused, searching for the right way to express the complex truth. Sometimes what looks like humiliation is actually illumination. What feels like rejection is actually protection. Jessica nodded, her gaze drifting to Benjamin again, her expression softening with love and certainty. I needed that illumination, that protection. I needed to learn what love isn't before I could fully recognize what it is. I followed her gaze, watching as Benjamin sensed her attention and looked up, his face lighting with a smile that reflected her own. This was what we had wanted for her all along, not just any marriage, but a true partnership built on mutual respect, genuine understanding, and eyes wide open love. In that case, I said softly, I'm grateful for that children's table. And even more grateful for the woman you've become through everything that followed. Jessica leaned her head against my shoulder, just as she had as a child seeking comfort. Me too, Mom. Me too. As the evening deepened around us, stars appearing one by one in the darkening sky, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this moment. From the humiliation of that restaurant seating arrangement to the audacious demand for wedding money, from broken engagement to healing and growth, from Seattle career opportunities to this garden engagement, it had been a winding path with painful stretches and unexpected turns. Yet standing here now, watching my daughter's genuine happiness as she rejoined Benjamin, seeing the easy affection between them, the balanced partnership they were building, I knew with absolute certainty. Sometimes the most beautiful destinations are reached only by traveling the most difficult roads. And sometimes, being seated at the children's table turns out to be the greatest gift of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.